What is going on, everybody? It is the Going Over Big Time podcast. I am Mike Charlip, and I am joined once again by my friend and co host, Alan the Fantastic. And today, we are here to discuss the Hulk Hogan Real American documentary that came out on Netflix. If you watched WrestleMania on Netflix, you heard about this a lot. like I did. I watched WrestleMania on Netflix on a UK uh, VPN, and yeah, I saw commercials for this doc a bunch, and they showed the same three segments of this documentary during WrestleMania like 7 times on both nights each. We saw the beginning of the NWO. We saw the Andre getting slammed stuff, and there was one other one, I think. But they showed those as previews during WrestleMania. If you watch WrestleMania on Netflix, multiple
I,
times.
Yeah, I think the third moment you were referring to is him winning the title at Madison Square Garden.
Okay, that is the one. Yes.
But yes, there were numerous commercials. As of this recording, Monday Night Raw once again set showed a small clip, just reminding you, yes, this documentary is on Netflix now, so please go watch it. Hulk Hogan, Real American.
Yeah, and I think as we expected, WWE to have major involvement, which would lead to not a lot of the stuff that we expected to be talked about a lot. Now they did touch on the things that happened in the last couple of years, but not a lot of in depth there. Not a lot of explaining the reasons why those things are happening. Just that they happened, and that's it. But I mean, this documentary was kind of what I expected it to be. It was a career retrospective, but to the point where they didn't go into a lot of detail. It was just like, hey, if you're a wrestling fan, then you probably already know all this stuff. But if you're not a wrestling fan, this is for you. And that's what seems to be the trend with these documentaries, especially when WWE is involved, is that they don't go into very much detail on certain things. And the main reason is because they want people who are not wrestling fans to watch it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so because that's a trend that WWE is going lately. They're going for like the casual fans or the more general audience. Um, I will say, just when watching this and then just looking at the beginning clips of Hogan working out in his home gym with his son Nick, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, it just hit me that wow, he that last years of his life, it's gotten to that point where it's like, yeah, Hogan was looking old and he wasn't looking the way I always envisioned him to look before. Because I remember, I remember watching Hogan's final, I guess, real run in WWE in the early 2000s when he came back post WCW being bought by WWE, and that final run where he got once again another world title run, feuding with like Shawn Michaels and Triple H at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, okay, wow, he looked like, I thought he actually looked kind of better than he did back in the 90s or the 80s. And then just looking at him now, like as in that past year, like, walking around with a cane and like just you can
Yeah.
see that his body had just given he still had like these huge arms with like the veins bursting out from like just years of like training and working out and wrestling. But it was just like, yeah, the like father time really caught up to him.
Yeah, so
um
it appeared that this documentary was going to come out whether he was still around or not. I think that they were not planning for this to be his final interview. It just happened to be his final interview because he unfortunately passed before it was released, and they had to add a lot of stuff about his passing. And yeah, so the majority of the documentary was told from the perspective of Hulk Hogan because he was doing this interview throughout it. And they really broke it down into, tiers of, like, the first episode was mostly about early life, meeting his first and longest running wife, having children, and getting into wrestling. Second episode was about the rise of Hulkamania. Third episode was NWO and everything that followed. And fourth episode was everything that happened after WCW. And
Right.
a lot of the things that have been more relevant recently. However, a lot of this stuff, they skipped over a lot of details. So, like, just as an example, they talked about, like, how he was supposed to face Bob Backlund for the title, but Bob Backlund didn't want to put him over. So they put the title on Iron Sheik for Iron Sheik to basically pass the torch. However, they didn't go into any other details about how, like, Iron Sheik was offered money by Vern Gagne to break Hogan's leg and go back to AWA. They didn't talk about that at all. There was absolutely no mention of Randy Savage whatsoever. Like, he was on screen, but Hogan did not talk about him at all. Not even a little. They showed little clips of things that happened in that period, but did not mention him by name.
I feel like that would have been hard to do, considering Randy is no longer with us. Neither is Miss Elizabeth.
Or his brother.
You know, or his brother, which I think he recently just passed away too.
Yeah.
So you were gonna get a one-sided account of what Hulk thought about his relationship with Randy Savage, regardless whether he was alive or not, because this is like as you're alluding, that this is a very biased pro. I don't want to say pro, but Hogan revisionist history, I guess.
Yes.
Would be the way to talk about it.
Yes.
I feel like I just want to squeeze in here that that first episode about his upbringing was a bit of an eye opener for me. I maybe this is just ignorance on my part. I did not know he was Italian. I never really connected that until I saw him with his parents.
I mean,
that was interesting.
I've known that for a long time.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, but it was just never. Yeah, the last name that I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But he also talked about a brother named Alan, which and he recounting how the last few moments when he saw his brother, because his brother had gone through some hard times and made some bad choices and basically died of a drug overdose because he was hanging out with the wrong crowd. And that was the only time where I think Hogan was he's like telling the interviewer to stop the recording because he didn't want to talk about it. So it was that was kind of sad to be honest. However, you mentioned that they didn't talk about Randy Savage really much. They did squeeze him in some time for the Ultimate Warrior, in which I thought once again everybody's crapping on the Warrior because he couldn't wrestle and he was a difficult person, and it was just like, yeah, that was a mistake. Wanted to retire. I thought he could like carry the company, but obviously he couldn't.
I mean, not to make light of like stuff that Warrior said as a person, but like how is it that we can go out of our way in almost everything to shit talk this guy who is also no longer with us, but like you're missing all these other details about stuff.
Yeah, it's very selective, right? Like, you know what? I just made the argument about Randy Savage. Maybe they didn't want to talk about him because he's dead. But then this other guy, they're okay with talking about because, I don't know, maybe he was a difficult person to work with because
Yeah,
apparently for all of Randy's personal faults, he knew how to wrestle, he knew the business, he knew how to work a match.
yeah,
If the story about him and Steamboat at WrestleMania 3, still probably one of the best matches talked about, how it
yeah.
was such a choreographed masterpiece that Randy and Ricky Steamboat
Mm-hmm.
developed. Um, at least I could chalk that up to the fact that Randy had enough respect still to maybe warrant some of that, but
Yeah.
apparently Warrior did, even though he's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. So as far as like episode 1 and talking about his early life and stuff like that, there wasn't a lot there that I like didn't know already. Other than the brother stuff, I think the brother stuff was probably the most emotional that entire documentary got from Hogan's perspective, and the only time that I could like know for a fact that he meant what he was saying, like, because like obviously Hulk Hogan had a reputation for being a liar about a lot of things,
Or
but
exaggerating facts or
yes,
constructing his own sort of reality.
yes, but I could tell that like talking about his brother was something that he could not exaggerate, could not fabricate. Um, but there are a bunch of things that he still took the time to to create his own narrative. Um, but yeah, like the early life stuff was kind of like pretty much all stuff that I knew already. It was, talking about the AWA stuff and then how he went to WWF, and then he got fired because he did Rocky 3, and which is still mind-boggling to think about. Like, you fired a guy for doing a movie? That's stupid. But then that's when he went to AWA and started like he started off as Terry Boulder and then became the Incredible Hulk.
The Hulk at the
Yeah,
time when copyright didn't really exist, and
yeah. So
carried the Hulk older, and then it just kind of
yeah, yeah. So they had to get around that with Marvel and all of that, so they couldn't call him Incredible Hulk. They had to Hulk. They had to like work around that and make it the Immortal Hulk or whatever it was. And then the Iron Sheik stuff. They talked about that, and yeah, and then they kind of just skipped around and didn't really talk about anything that happened between 84 and 87.
Well, yeah. So just going back to the Iron Sheik stuff, I think it was a little bit insightful to think of how Hogan was developing his gimmick, because at the time, look, he was a big guy. He was like a lot of muscles. Sure, okay, yeah, he's like a Greek god sculpted from granite, whatever. But it was like, there's what is that thing, right? You look good, but what is that thing that will connect you to the audience?
Yeah.
And they looked into back then in the 80s when America was sort of just coming out of a decline, and then what's the easiest story you can tell? Ooh, bad foreigners. America is the good guys. Like, he turned himself in this sort of pro-American person against this guy who was like representing literally the country that just kidnapped a bunch of Americans at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty well timed in terms
Mm-hmm.
of developing a storyline and developing a character, and it worked, right? So, Hulk Hogan became the All American sort
Yeah.
of hero,
Yeah.
fighting the evil Iranian, and then later you sub in whatever nationality versus America, because that's always the tried
Yeah.
and true formula.
And
But
of
yeah, you're
course
right. There was a whole. They went from '84 to
they talked
'87, I
about
guess, because
WrestleMania one. They talked about, of
uh-huh.
course, they had to talk about WrestleMania one because it was
Yes,
how big of a deal it was. And
yeah,
I mean, they talked about how like the whole card was basically built around that one match, and the rest of the
yep,
card was kind of just thrown together.
right.
And the only reason that the show succeeded at all was because of Mr. T's involvement.
Hmm.
And how there was a possibility that if WrestleMania didn't work at all, that Vince would have failed.
It was
Because
a gamble.
yeah,
It was well, it's a lot of business ventures is about risk taking, and he took a big risk,
yeah,
and he lucked out.
yeah. So and they went into that, and they obviously the rock and wrestling stuff. They didn't like hit on that too hard, but they talked about like the cartoon and all of that, and how Hogan was becoming larger than life, and all of that. And then they just went right to WrestleMania 3. They're like, oh
I
yeah,
mean, they talked about him developing his promos, and like even Bret Hart, who just obviously shat on Hogan later on, but he shits
yeah,
on everybody, right? Bret Hart,
yeah,
even he said Hulk Hogan probably had the best promo of all time, right? Like he timed it 59 seconds, one take, and that was it.
yeah,
So, and I watched some of those early Hogan promos. I was like, these are really good. Like I like the way he was just like it's so full of energy, and it's so fast paced. I'm like he's squeezing in all these words together, and it's just like
yeah,
wow, like you can't do that. Like not a lot of normal folks can probably string together that
yeah.
many words in
Yeah, I
with
mean,
that sort of like charisma and intensity.
he had like a natural charisma that
Yeah.
just worked on screen. And yeah, so then they go into they just touch on other things. Like they showed a clip of WrestleMania 2 but didn't talk about it at all. And then they went into WrestleMania 3, and we saw basically that clip that they've been showing in every, like, they showed it during WrestleMania 42 like 4 times, where he's talking about facing Andre. And
Well, it was the immortal moment that was when that was
yes,
it enshrined in the Hall of Fame, right?
yes. So yeah, they're talking about and he's told this story so many times that he's basically just repeating himself. Like, oh, I didn't know what was going to happen because Andre didn't want to tell me what the finish was. And he's like, oh, we'll just get out there and see what happens. And they did the whole deal, and Hogan was just thankful for what, I guess, thankful that Andre did what he did. But of course, they did the whole WWE narrative of, oh, well, Andre had never been slammed before that,
Wow.
which is not true, because Hogan had slammed Andre literally like 9 years before. Like,
So I'm glad you brought that up because I kind of forgot about that. I think they brought it up in the what was it, the A&E documentary about Andre himself, and then they had
uh,
literally Hogan talking about this. I
HBO,
feel like
HBO, HBO.
HBO, but yeah, it was like
Yeah,
so some of the stuff they're talking about, I was just like, okay, yeah, you did not talk about the part where Andre really didn't tell Hogan what what the finish was, and then Hogan spent like the whole day before the match going like, hey,
yeah,
hey, boss, what's the finish gonna be? You know, if I know, and then right in there, just before Hogan did it, Andre basically called the move, slam me.
yeah,
Like, okay, there you go.
yep,
Left that part out.
yeah. So then they basically went into after that, that's when Hogan was like, I'm trying to have a family and all of that, and they talk about when Brooke is born, and then Nick, and then like around that time, around the time that Nick is born, is around the time that he wants to wind down because he wants to be a family man, and so that's when they decide that Ultimate Warrior is going to be the new guy, but they didn't put into account that Ultimate Warrior didn't have the same natural charisma that Hogan did to carry the show, and that he would get winded literally every night before the match even started.
Well, no, literally the match at Toronto at WrestleMania 6 when he beat Hogan for the title. Well, this is Hogan's account. He was saying, yeah, Warrior wanted to end at 3 minutes. And I told him, no, we can't, we're not ending at 3 minutes, brother. He's like, he was like, he was gassed by the end.
I don't recall that detail ever coming out. I feel like that was new information, but maybe I just didn't hear that.
But the thing is, it's so believable that even if Hogan was lying, it's kind of like I'm not sure if he is, because like he was Warrior. Well, I mean, Jim Hellwig was known to be a difficult worker and really didn't try to actually learn wrestling, and you can imagine him being gassed because he was just like if he was just being like carried along. Like most Ultimate Warrior matches I heard were like the other guy like basically did all the work. Ted DiBiase, Jake the Snake, Hogan.
Bobby Heenan always would say that Ultimate Warrior was his least favorite person to work with because he always hurt him.
Yeah.
Always. But yeah, so they talked about how Warrior became the guy, and then they realized down the line that he wasn't cut out to be the guy. So they just put the belt back on Hogan. They had Sergeant Slaughter do the transitional thing, and then they turned that into a political thing to get the title.
Literally the exact same thing in 1990, 91 that they did in 1984 or 83. I can't remember. 84. Literally the same storyline. Evil foreigner, got the title belt.
They even had Iron Sheik there, just playing a different character.
Yeah, exactly. And the Sheik was managing Sergeant Slaughter, who turned the most batshit thing ever you could imagine at the time, turned into a Rocky sympathizer. And he's like, I'm for Iraq now, as they invaded Kuwait literally around that same time. And then Hulk comes in as the all-American hero once again.
Yeah. They did not talk about why that event needed to switch venues at all, because it was supposed to be in a stadium, but there was a bomb threat, so they had to move it to an arena.
Yeah, I feel like they should have added that in. That would have made it more interesting.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that you mentioned this. They did the transition back to Hogan, and then they kind of left it at that, because then my recollection was they started talking about, they need to bring in a new guy to like replace me again, and then in comes Bret Hart, who was at that time, after a long and successful tag team run, became his single star, and then was really picking up like traction with the fans.
Yep.
Which was what Vince McMahon was looking for. But then this time, the issue wasn't that he couldn't wrestle. The issue was apparently Hogan didn't like that. So he was like, yeah. So
Bret,
it was like,
so Bret was interviewed, as you mentioned, and his recollection was, and I tend to believe Bret more when he says stuff. I mean, there's some stuff that he said recently that I'm not so sure about British Bulldog, but that's neither here nor there. But he was interviewed for this, and he talked about how, like, when Hogan went away to film stuff and then came back to work WrestleMania 9, that Hogan gave him the cold shoulder when Bret tried to shake his hand, because Bret didn't like that Hogan did not like that Brett was taking his spot, even though he himself chose to step away. Um, so then they talked about how he came back to work with Brutus as a tag team at WrestleMania 9. And then, of course, the thing that everybody hates happens at WrestleMania 9, where Brett loses to Yoko, and then Hogan comes out after, and they just have an impromptu match where Hogan wins the belt.
Awful
Yeah.
finish.
And
like
the reason that Brett didn't make a bigger stink about it, and they didn't really talk about this on the documentary, was because Brett was promised that Hogan would eventually do the job for him, which not happened because Hogan did the job for Yokozuna in June at King of the Ring, and then Hogan disappeared.
Right, because I think at that time Vince was like, "Yeah, he's getting old. We need to transition." But that was like the first time that he realized that, and that's why he started pushing Bret Hart. And then Hogan just convinced him. But then at that point, it was
he used a term here. He used a term here that would eventually become synonymous with Hulk Hogan. He said, "I used the old Hogan stroke to get put into the title match." And he said this during the interview, and of course that would become a thing most prominent later on in Hogan's career because of him being the only wrestler in history to have creative control over whatever he was doing. And so then once he drops the title to Yoko, which they didn't even discuss, he just disappears after that, and he kind of is at the point where he kind of feels like he doesn't want to do it anymore again. And
so he goes off and starts being an actor and starts shooting movies.
Yes.
And then some of the cameos in this documentary were kind of surprising. Christopher Lloyd, as in freaking, Mr. Nanny. I was trying to think of the Back to the Future. With Doc, what's his name?
Doc Brown.
Dr. Brown from Back to the Future. It was Christopher Lloyd. I was like, I didn't really pay much attention to Hogan's movie career during the early '90s, so I did not know that he co-starred a movie with.
And they also surprisingly did not talk about No Holds Barred at all. Not even a little. They showed one clip of it.
It's funny they brought up Mr. Nanny and thought that was fine, and No Holds Barred was not.
What was the
Thunder in Paradise?
No, that was the show. There was another movie.
Oh,
Commando something.
Suburban Commando.
That's the one. Yeah,
I think that was the one with Christopher Lloyd.
Yeah, actually. That's the one that Christopher Lloyd was in. Suburban Commando.
Yeah.
And, it was odd that Christopher Lloyd had an interview here because literally all he was doing was like, "Oh yeah, I worked with Hogan." Blah blah blah.
All the actors that Hogan knows is friends with and co-star with, I'm surprised they couldn't get Arnold or Sylvester Stallone to do a thing. It was just Sylvester Stallone. Where the fuck was Rocky? One of his closest probably friends outside of wrestling, and you couldn't even get Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah, I mean, the whole reason that Hogan got into acting was because Sylvester Stallone basically got him into wrestling because he worked out at the gym that Sylvester Stallone worked at. And then they were like, "Hey, we want you to be a wrestler in Rocky 3." And then you couldn't get Stallone to pop in here. So then episode 2 is when they start going into episode 3, sorry, is when we get into WCW. And they're just talking about how he's doing Thunder in Paradise. The whole thing that we already know about how like Thunder in Paradise was filmed on the same exact lot that WCW was filmed on. And Eric Bischoff went over there and he was just like, "Hey, why don't you come here to my show and do this?" And yeah, it was weird that like again, for wrestling fans, we know that stuff already. But they're doing that for the people who are not wrestling fans. To be
Right.
like
So
uh,
I didn't realize that when Bischoff brought Hogan into WCW, they did basically a fake ticker tape parade with
yes.
fake fans and fake reporters asking Hulk questions about coming in to the company. I
Yeah.
just thought, oh, that's amusing.
Yeah, they
Um,
they talked about how like the parade that they had was staged. Like everybody that was there was paid to be there.
it's funny because when Donald Trump first ran for president, he came down that golden escalator. He also paid people to allegedly be there just to stand around and apparently be normal members of the public.
Of course.
Wow. Where did he? Well, I wonder where he picked up that idea from. Okay,
Uh,
but yeah, the Hogan WCW run was, or the first one. You know, they put him in. Basically, his first match beats Ric Flair for the world title. You get that nostalgia bump, but they had this guy who wrote a book about Hulk and was saying, yeah, I remember looking at that. It was just like, this is a nostalgia kind of thing. This is not 1984, 1985 Hulk Hogan. This is not 1984 Hulk Hogan. This is just kind of a watered down version.
yeah.
Also, by that time, he was a bit tainted because he was dealing with the steroid controversies and the being testifying at Vince McMahon's
Yeah.
steroids trial.
Yeah. So that was something that they touched on at the beginning of the WCW episode where he was kind of like the reason he was falling out of love with wrestling was because of that trial, partially, and he was asked to testify, and of course they showed the Arsenio clips, of course, where he blatantly lied about not using steroids and admitted that he blatantly lied for the first time on camera, I think. Um, and then he testified in court and basically said that he saved Vince McMahon from going to prison. He
Well, he
saved,
also said that Arsenio Hall got his job because of him. So I
yeah,
mean, I don't know how
yeah, he
accurate that
said he
is.
said that as well, which I probably would chalk that up to Hogan exaggeration. Um,
Yeah, yeah. So there was one weird Hogan lie that didn't make it through the
yes.
final cut. It was that one.
Um, you mentioned Christopher Lloyd earlier. One of the really odd interviews that happened during this documentary, and I think it was in this episode, it might have been in episode 2, was Werner Herzog was interviewed for this.
So
Um,
yeah, okay. I am aware that he is a director and producer of movies. I did see
yeah,
him in The Mandalorian. But yeah, of all the people, Werner Herzog, just talking about like very philosophically about who is Hulk Hogan and who is Terry Bollea. Are
yeah.
they one and the same? Or can they ever be two separate
He
people?
he said no. He said he didn't even want to know Hogan's real name. He said
Yeah,
he had no idea that Hulk Hogan was not his real name, and he did not want to be told what it was.
it's funny. It said underneath it, his name was like director and wrestling fan. I'm like, oh, I did not know Werner Herzog watched wrestling, so it was just like very amusing to me. Of all the random cameos, it was that guy.
Yeah. Um. So yeah, then they get into the NWO stuff after the steroid trial stuff, and yeah, I mean they don't really go into anything as far as like they're just like, oh yeah, this was a career resurgence for me. I don't think if I would have did this that I would have lasted as long as I did, and but they didn't really talk about anything that happened at all. It was kind of just like, yeah, this was a lot of fun until it wasn't. and and then again, they also did not go into detail about the Vince Russo stuff. They kind of just glanced over it and was like, yeah, I mean, this stuff was falling apart over there. And that was when I knew I was done for good. And
So yeah, I mean, in I'm not saying in anybody's defense, but I've seen enough from like Dark Side of the Ring and
yeah,
the that HBO one that where they did about who killed WCW. There was enough of there from
yeah,
Vince Russo himself to like go
yeah,
over all of that.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so it was kind of a lot of just like, and I think we've glanced over the fact that like Linda Hogan was interviewed for basically the whole documentary, about everything, and she, one of the clips that they showed during WrestleMania over and over and over again was how they put together one of his outfits for the NWO, and he was just like, hey, do I have like black boots in the closet? And oh yeah, these from like 1965. And oh, and he put on some of my black leggings, and like it was just odd. I mean, like obviously she had a good perspective of everything that happened because she was there for all of it. But yeah, it was just like every time like she would enter with like a quip about something, it would just
well, Linda was his longtime wife for like 25 years. I'm not
yeah,
surprised they put her in there. Nick
yeah,
Holt, her son Nick, obviously, because
yeah,
he's been on like television since Hulk's passing. Brooke Hogan, who was not appear did not appear at all. Um, I found surprising until I heard that she had uh, taken herself out of Hulk's will
yeah,
when he passed. And then I thought, oh yeah, okay, they did a whole weird family reality show together, as well as
yeah.
Brooke Hogan. I remember being on TNA as like Bully Ray's fiance, so I
Oh
think
god,
maybe she's just had enough of the spotlight at this point.
yeah. So after the WCW stuff ends, um, that's when he comes back to WWE in 2002. They talk about WrestleMania 18 a little bit and how like the fans like just wanted Hulkamania back and all of that, and of course they talk about that a little, but not to the extent that there was a lot to discuss there. Really, then they go into like how he had all these random appearances throughout the years after that. Um, he makes a comment about the Shawn Michaels match, but again, they do not go into it at all. Like he just makes a comment like, "Oh, Shawn was just jumping around and bouncing around in there."
That was weird
And
to say when he said that Shawn oversold Hogan's moves as a way to make fun of Hogan because he's old.
yeah,
Because like they did that part with
but
Larry King,
but
that Larry King clip where he dressed up as a geriatric
yeah,
100-plus-year-old Hulk Hogan.
but as wrestling fans, we know that that's not why Shawn Michaels did that. The reason that Shawn Michaels did that is because they were supposed to do a trilogy of matches where HBK and Hogan would both win one, and then they would do a third. And Hogan said that that didn't work for him, and he just wanted to do a one-off where he won. And Shawn Michaels hated that because that's stupid. Like you have these two generational talents going at it. If you're gonna have one match, it doesn't make sense for Hogan to win because Hogan's not sticking around. Like, they wanted to have a trilogy, and Hogan was like, "No, I'm good." That's why Shawn Michaels did that, not because he was
Yeah.
making fun of the fact that Hogan was old. So that was another Hogan lie
Right.
that they told during the documentary, and that again, it was just a passing comment. He's like, oh yeah, I came back for sporadic appearances here and there, worked with Shawn Michaels, and he just jumped around a lot and didn't want to sell for me or oversold for me and did this and that was it. There was nothing else said about the match, and then they talked about how he faced Randy Orton and he won that one too, even though he shouldn't have.
Yeah,
And
I think that was actually Hulk's last match in WWE.
yeah,
Right, because I think even Triple H said in one of the segments was that this is not a long term thing. This is a one and done bump. This is gonna be like this is a nostalgia bump. It was like the big high was Hogan versus Rock WrestleMania 18 in the Skydome.
Yeah.
After that, maybe you kind of milked it for a few weeks of the old red and yellow Hulk Hogan, but
they didn't talk about how, like, because of that WrestleMania 18 pop, like how the crowd just got behind him again, was the reason why he got another title in 2002. But that ended up being a horrible idea because there wasn't a lot that he was doing in those matches, and he only had like 3 matches as champion. And of course, they didn't talk about that horrible chokeslam that he took from the Undertaker. But they showed a clip of when Brock Lesnar beat him with a bear hug, but didn't really they just glanced over it. They didn't really talk about it. And then they were like, yeah, after the Randy match, that was kind of it for me. And that's when they started talking about Hogan Knows Best, which ended up being like the downfall of his family in a sense.
Yeah.
Because there was cameras everywhere, and the main goal of the documentary was to help Brooke to be a singer.
Right.
And it ended up ending his marriage.
So this whole thing was supposed to bring them all together. I mean, that might have been a second reason. I mean, Brooks' career, sure, that might be the first reason. It ended up destroying his family.
That was the main goal. He claims that was the main goal, to launch Brooks' singing career. And at first he was like, "Oh yeah, this will be a lot of fun. I'm doing stuff that I didn't really do on screen." And we glanced over a little how like Linda talked about how like during the NWO times that he kind of started to be more closed off. But they kind of worked through that. And then he was talking about during the Hogan Knows Best stuff how that's when he like started to get out of his shell more again and do more things and be more open to being on camera doing these things that are not wrestling. It all in return to get Brooke in the limelight to launch her singing career. And Nick was just there. Literally. Nick was just there. That was...
They made him look like a juvenile delinquent, basically. Hey, ratings are down. Nick, can you put some water balloons, lunch, hit some cars a bit?
Yeah, he even said that. He's like, I was like 19, 20, and they wanted me to act like I was 15. Like, and
they're like they just focus on the pranks and the stupid shit I do and don't talk about my own music writing. Because ironically, you talk about Brooks' music career. I mean, Nick was writing music apparently, but nobody focuses on that because Brooks a hot blonde, and that's where the focus has to be, right?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, this leads into the talk about how Linda and Hulk's marriage ended up falling apart, and there was a period where they were like trying to continue to do the reality show, but while they were in the process of a divorce, which didn't make any sense. At that point, you should just pull the plug on the show. Um, but yeah, and then that's when they start. That's when we kind of like go into episode 4. Episode 4 is titled Hulk versus Terry. The reason that it's called that is because a big theme of the documentary is the fact that Hulk Hogan lost the plot of being Terry Bollea to the point where he just was like, Terry Bollea and Hulk Hogan are two different people. And
technically that's true, but we got to the point where it's hard to distinguish one from the other.
yeah,
You know, nobody knows who Terry Bollea is. He's been Hulk Hogan his entire fucking life.
yeah,
There's no way to really know who Terry is, except like with his ex-wife and his closest family for
yeah,
the most part. You know,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, they're literally called them. Their names are literally Linda Hogan, Nick Hogan, Brooke Hogan. Shouldn't they be Linda Bollea, Nick Bollea,
yeah,
Brooke Bollea?
yeah. So yeah, this is when they start talking about like how they after they got divorced. The reason they got divorced was because Linda found some other woman's panties.
It was more like a wristband or some kind, but
yeah, I thought it was
I
underwear.
think.
I thought it was underwear.
I mean, if it was, I wouldn't put it past them.
Yeah, I could be wrong about that, but yeah. So they get divorced and they both start to date younger, very younger. Um,
Oh, boy.
they did not talk about his second marriage at all. He apparently had a second marriage that they just glanced over. I think because of legal reasons.
Yeah.
And yeah, they start talking about how around this time he's just kind of trying to do stuff for money just to get by, and that's when he
Yeah.
goes to TNA.
Yep.
And man, that TNA run was not good.
No, that was just sad to hear about and watch.
Yeah,
That Hogan needed money. Like they
he,
gave him a lifeline, but still, it was just like.
yeah,
I mean, I want to look. I'm sorry, I have to say this, but like this, like he was in so much pain, and they started describing his back surgeries to the point where it was like Doctor Octopus from the Spider-Man comics getting the metal arms installed in his back. And I was looking at pictures of Hogan, his surgeries, just putting screws into his back. It was just like,
yep.
it's just the same kind of thing. The
Yeah,
most batshit thing that Hogan was saying about his health issues at this time was that he had to shove fentanyl under his lips and put fentanyl next to his legs and basically eat like 1,500 milligram lollipops of fentanyl. And I'm like, his doctor is like, how the hell are you still alive? Nobody takes this much fentanyl. And this is fentanyl, like literally one of the most dangerous drugs currently right now that's killing a lot of people.
Yeah. And
what the hell?
I believe it was Kevin Nash who talked about how the reason that Hulk was so beat up was because he spent 20 plus years of doing leg drops and just putting all that impact on his pelvic and lower back area to the point where like that was the reason that he could not walk and could not move, especially during this TNA time. So during this TNA time was when he was doing more like street fights and blood and stuff like that to mask the fact that he could not bump at all.
Yeah, that was a. I mean, that was an interesting point, and I just made me realize, oh yeah, that is true. Like you spent 20, 30 years dropping your leg and like basically dropping your pelvis onto like a hard mat every night. Basically, you that's gonna have long term repercussions.
Yeah,
Which is, and then that was I thought interesting that Hulk admitted that if I could go back and change one thing, I probably wouldn't do the leg drop every night.
yeah,
When you have 24-inch biceps, why not do like a sleeper hold? You know, Gunter does the sleeper hold.
yeah.
Um,
Gunther
and it's not
and
like and it's you know what's so surprising to me. I went back and watched some of Hogan's matches in Japan,
yeah,
and there was a match he had in '91 against Tenru, and
hmm
it was like weirdly starting off as like some technical masterpiece. You think Zack Saber Jr. was picking up tips from
yeah,
this match
yeah,
decades later, and it's like,
yeah,
where's this Hulk Hogan in America? And
yeah.
you like he
Um,
could have easily found some kind of easier move to do that didn't require him to
well,
bust up
and
his spine like that.
Gunther is like the perfect example because that guy doesn't do anything that would like impact himself physically to the like. I mean, like the only thing that he really does that like could play a role is he does a drop kick, but like he doesn't do it every single night. Like
I've seen him do a splash off the top rope, but that is so rare. It's almost like a
yeah,
once a year
yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah. He does that like once in a blue moon kind of thing. But yeah,
Mhm.
he has such a simple move set. And again, a leg drop is a very simple thing, but when you're doing it every single night on a hard mat that's wooden boards that are covered by a very thin mat, like that's what a wrestling ring is. It's wood covered by a wrestling style mat, and that's it. Like, and yeah, every single night you're just driving your leg and spine into the mat and causing more. I mean, even Matt Hardy. Matt Hardy had a similar thing because he was doing leg drops from the top rope for years. And I mean that guy's still going, but like yeah. So yeah, the TNA run did not really go well. And after that is when things start to take a turn for the worst. And that's when we get into a lot of this Bubba the Love Sponge stuff.
And yeah,
And that's where we get into the racist stuff. And again, this was kind of only touched on. But so they talk about the Gawker trial and how he wins that money and uses that money to open his restaurant. But then people start to go back and listen to what he's saying in those videos. And the things that he are saying are the things he's saying are not good. They are very, very racist. And they only really
I
touched on
think yeah. Well, this was the closest we heard from an apology that he gave for saying those things. Of course, they didn't like they don't need to go specifically into what they said, but that people knew. I think at this point we all know what he said.
yeah,
But I heard probably the closest that he was gonna of him apologizing for what he did, and if that gives some closure to him or those he affected, just
yeah,
that's the best you can deal with.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, of course,
I mean, yeah,
there have been multiple. This has been a common thread even before he died that like he never really apologized for those things, and I mean, like he spoke in front of the locker room of mostly the black wrestlers that worked at WWE, and his response instead of actually apologizing was, uh, "You never know when you're going to be recorded." Like,
I remember that. Yeah.
um, and yeah, I mean, like, this really like painted him in a bad light, obviously, and then they start talking about his political uh, aspirations.
So, I guess besides Werner Herzog and Christopher Lloyd, the other cameo I kind of didn't really expect because I didn't think he would have the time was President Donald Trump.
What do you mean? He's got plenty of time. He's got all
So
the time.
I love how he did a whole I love how they did a semi wrestling entrance for it. They showed an empty chair in some room in the White House, and then they were alluding to Trump earlier, right? Because it was in the '80s, and Hulk met Trump because they did WrestleMania, what 5 at freaking Atlantic City,
Four
and then
and
they just showed this empty chair, and suddenly it was like, is it him? And then he comes in and says, oh yeah, I knew Hulk way back in the day. He was always a great showman, kind of like me,
Mm-hmm.
What was so funny about that was before he started talking, I've got a big Russia meeting, so hope we can get this over with. And it's like you're in the middle of negotiating, God knows what, around the world that could have possible huge ramifications for millions of people, and you find the time to sit down and talk about Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It's just like you'll never get another kind of president like this. But anyway,
So then they start talking about. So the reason like that this all like they start talking about his third wife, who he meets at a signing. She's there to meet him, and she is much younger than him. I think probably like 40s when he is in his 60s.
So they mentioned that she had an 18-year-old autistic son. So
yes,
I would assume she was in a previous marriage.
And
but yes,
and she is very born again Christian, and that is why he starts to be more religious than he was previously, and because of that, he starts to be more political than he was recently. And he talks about how like he spent most of his career not really publicly picking a side. But he felt that 2016 was the time to do that. And
well, he mentioned in like I think there was a clip of him talking to like some Fox News guy saying, well, 2016, I kind of kept quiet. I may have just voted for Trump. 2020, I voted for Trump too, but I kept quiet about it. And then it was 2024, yes, that he came out and did that whole thing where he realized he went to the Republican National Convention and he did the tearing the shirt off and like he said the catalyst was when they tried to kill Trump at that crazy rally during the election.
Yes, that staged rally. That staged rally where his ear was.
Let's just say for legal reasons, alleged staged rally where he allegedly was shot in the ear. But yeah, so that was probably one of the more. I mean, on top of all the iconic images of Hulk Hogan throughout his entire life, watching him at that convention tearing his shirt off and talk about Trump-mania, right? I was like, okay, yeah. I will say though, if I could be a little more candid here, that I will never fault anyone who comes to Jesus. To be honest, truly felt like,
that's his choice, and I'm not blaming him for that.
Yeah, I think after the way they outlined the way his personal life with Linda went and how things unfolded with the family and the reality show and all that stuff. I thought, okay, I'm happy he found somebody that could steered him in a more clear direction, I guess. But yeah, the political stuff, I think he knew, like even he knew, like you said, they were like his fan base. There were Democrats who were Hulkamaniacs, there were Republicans who were Hulkamaniacs. But yeah, after that whole election thing, when he started going out and doing books signings again and all that stuff, you're seeing like people wearing MAGA hats, people holding Trump signs, and it's
Yeah.
like, and they're like,
And
hey,
obviously they're
great
not,
speech at the convention. Thank God he got in. I'm like, oh yeah, brother.
and
Otherwise we all in jail. And
I mean, I hate to. I mean, again, we try not to get too political on here. I mean, you're the politics guy, not me.
yeah,
But like they didn't like talk about how like he takes pictures with Nazis, not knowing that they're Nazis, and like yeah, I mean, it sucks, but
so I'm not saying this in his defense. He's not the first celebrity slash political figure to accidentally take pictures of alleged Nazis or actual Nazis and not know about it.
yeah,
It's a running issue that
yes,
yeah, I don't know. Sometimes it gets more fans than people realize when they do stuff like that. Not in the
yeah,
right areas though.
yes.
Um,
So yeah, then they go into that the Netflix premiere of WWE Raw, and
mm-hmm.
they try to pass it off as political because it's in California, a very blue state. And it was really, I mean, partially, yes, it was political, but it was also because he's a racist. It wasn't just because he was openly supporting Trump. It was because was not a nice person around that time when it came to that stuff. Because he did not publicly apologize for those things. If he had publicly apologized for the things that he said in those videos that he claims he did not know he was being recorded for, maybe it would have been different. And like Jimmy Hart was interviewed throughout the show because that was like his friend and literal manager in real life. And
yeah.
He
one of Hulk Hogan's closest friends, confidants, like someone who knew him inside and out.
Yes. And he talked about how like him and Hulk were standing there during the Netflix premiere, and like he just like muttered to him like off mic, like it's like are they booing me? And like yes they are. Like, and of course on camera he tried to play it off like, oh, it people react differently in different places, but like we knew why he was being booed there, and it wasn't just political.
Yeah, Triple H saying, "Oh yeah, it's L.A. It's got a different vibe here." I mean, it could be true, but here's the other thing. And I'm getting a little political here. In the last election, Trump actually increased support in places like L.A. and New York. Like he didn't win those areas, but there are a lot more Republican people in Los Angeles and New York than at that time you realize. They may have just voted Republican out of spite, but or they didn't feel the alternative was offering any option. But yeah, it wasn't less though like Trump was like deeply unpopular. He had pockets of like people that liked him, so it wasn't. But I don't think it was. But to your point, it wasn't like because they're booing him because he's a Republican now. But yeah, they're booing him because like he said a bunch of racist crap that he never at that time apologized for. I don't know if he got the same reaction when he did MSG in New York, probably just a few months before he passed away. But
I don't recall that. So then around this is kind of when we start to the documentary starts to wind down, and of course they had to talk about his passing,
right? Because they were expecting to they were actually expecting to follow up with him a few months after this last.
Yes, because they actually recorded a portion of his interviews where he was like, "Oh, okay, so we're done." He's like, "Yeah, and the director was like, "Yeah, we're done. We'll catch up with you," and blah blah blah. And then, unfortunately, he happened to pass away. And so around this time that like he passed away, and obviously he is a legend in the sport of wrestling. Like, things don't get to the place that they are without him. And I completely understand that. And I think everybody kind of completely understands that. To the point where, like, people who did grow up in that era, like, I mean, that was not my era. I'm a 90s kid. When I started watching wrestling, it was like peak attitude era. So I was not I was not a Hulkamaniac. Like, and I have family and friends who, like, when he passed, was like, "Oh, is it like hurt? Does it hurt that he's gone?" And I'm like, not really, because it wasn't my era. But
Mhm.
I respect what he did and respect the fact that what he did for the business as a whole got the business to where it is now. And there isn't other wrestling without him. It's not just there's no WWE without him. There's no wrestling without him. Like, because he's the reason that wrestling got into the mainstream at all. And other companies wouldn't be able to survive because wrestling wouldn't be as big as it is or was
Right.
at the time. So it's not just WWE, it's all of wrestling. And it just played a bigger role in WWE because that's where he was. Um, yeah, I mean, it sucks that he had to that things went the way that they did at the end, and maybe he would have, because obviously he lost a lot of support for the things that he did and said at the end, to the point where, like, when they did do a tribute for him, a lot of black wrestlers, like Triple H. So Triple H said on this documentary that the roster was given the option to stand for his 10 bell salute if they wanted to or not. And there were some very notable people that did not. Um, Most of them were black.
Mm.
And I don't think that those people ever really got the closure that they expected from him in response to the things that he said. And now they probably never will. And their view of him is probably forever changed. And unfortunately, it's going to be like that for a lot of people. Um, if you can just look at what he did for wrestling as a whole and still respect him as a wrestler, that's completely okay. But some people are not going to anymore because of the things that he did and said in the last couple of years. And that is also okay.
Hmm. I mean, yeah, like you, I never really grew up in the era of Hulk Hogan, so the people like my personal round Mount Rushmore of wrestling: Steve Austin, Bret Hart, The Rock, and probably Jake the Snake Roberts, actually,
Mm-hmm.
because I appreciate the psychology he brought into developing characters, which kind of then inspired a lot of other people who like use kind of mind games scenarios. I
Mm-hmm.
guess I could like do Undertaker slash Jake Roberts intermittently, but yeah, Hulk Hogan. I recognize his contributions to wrestling itself. Like it would never be the way it is now without him and doing the Rock and Wrestling and like WrestleMania 1, the Mr. T match, the slamming Andre the Giant. You needed some kind of like the way the business was going at that time. Somebody was going to take over not all the territories. Someone was going to subsume all the territories and make it all national under one person. Whether that was McMahon, whether that was Vern Gagne, whether that was somebody else, but you needed somebody like that had that spark that could have like connected pro wrestling in its traditional form to the mainstream entertainment. right, to mainstream entertainment, to the popular culture, and he did it. He was the first one to do it. I don't think there's anybody else that could have like even today do it. Um, when you talk about wrestling to like regular everyday people that don't watch the stuff at all, the first image they have is Hulk Hogan, red and yellow, ripping the shirt off his chest.
Yeah.
So it's always going to be that iconic image.
Hmm.
I am sad that he's passed on. We are kind of just losing those legends around us that defined the sport for a long time. You know, like think about it. Kevin Nash is the only one left from that original NWO.
Yeah.
Um, you know, nobody from WrestleMania 3 is alive in that main event.
No.
The only one left alive in WrestleMania 1, as far as I know, is Mr. T, right? So it's just
Yep.
losing him. And I'm looking at all these other matches I've been watching through the WWE archives on Netflix. It's just like, wow, so many of these folks are gone, now including Hulk.
Hmm.
And it's very surreal to me to think about that. To
Yeah.
And I think this documentary really tried to, in its in it whether of course it's WWE produced, but they tried to. I think they tried their best to try to address some of like who is Terry Bollea and who's Hulk Hogan. It's like the way the stock ended with her Werner Herzog music. Like, was there ever like was Hulk Hogan the real person, or was Terry Bollea never really a real person? It was always Hulk all along, and all these kind of philosophical questions. But yeah, ultimately, there was. I don't think at the end of the day there was no way to separate Terry Bollea from Hulk Hogan and vice versa. He was this man was always going to be Hulk Hogan, even when he was trying to be Terry, I guess.
Yeah.
But but they also did say, I think they also like through some of this controversies about his racism and this, cheating on his wife and the divorce, and they, in a sense, they did a lot outline that this is a real human being that that had a lot of mistakes in his life, that had flaws, that was loved by family, friends, and now he's gone, and that's a really sad thing. And they
Yeah.
tried to humanize him in a way.
Yeah. And I think that that's probably the biggest thing you could take away from it is that like, this obviously is a very common thing even in today's wrestling. Like, I mean, I think it's relevant. Like how we see like wrestlers like get bombarded at airports and stuff, and people seem to think that they're like obligated to do that because they're so popular as wrestlers. They are still people. They, just because you're a giant fan of them doesn't mean that they aren't still people. And like, I think that was the thing with Hulk Hogan, especially. Like, at some point, it the lines were blurred to where does Hulk Hogan end and where does Terry Bollea begin, or vice versa. Like, because in public, he was always Hulk Hogan, and even at an airport, or and like he even said this. He's like, like as soon as I knew that there was a fan there, I had to flip the switch and no longer be Terry and just be Hulk Hogan. And I think us as a society, as fans, need to understand that like wrestlers are people. They're not just wrestlers. They have lives, and some of them have issues blurring the lines. And I think Hulk Hogan had issues blurring the lines. And yeah, I mean, people are going to forever remember him for everything that he accomplished, uh, attributed, gave to the wrestling world, and I mean that's all. I think that's all that anybody really can say about it. Again, you can have your opinions of Terry Bollea the person, or even Hulk Hogan the person, um, and that's fine. But I think that, and it was even said that like this was our, despite what people may think about WrestleMania 42 as a whole, WrestleMania 42 was the first WrestleMania where there was no Hulk Hogan, and there is no WrestleMania without Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, maybe this is really just the end of an era. Now, without Hulk Hogan even being around, right? All we have is a bronze statue of him and like this,
Yeah.
little sculpture of him slamming Andre as to commemorate that legendary moment. But going forward, like you already did a whole episode about the recent firings at WWE, so it's just like, what is this company gonna turn into without like some of the pillars that kind of uh, established it in the first place? So
Yeah. And yeah, so we will. I think we will call it there. Um, say what you want about Hulk Hogan the person, and I think like this documentary as a whole is for people to watch if you don't know all that we know about Hulk Hogan. I mean, even my mother watched it, and like my mother grew up in that era, so she kind of had an idea of, but she didn't know any of those details about certain things, and there was parts of it she said that made her sad. So, um, yeah, I would say like everybody should watch it, whether you like or dislike Hulk Hogan in any way, shape, or form. But for now, that's going to do it for us. Make sure to go to our linktree / going over big time podcast for all the ways to watch and listen to this podcast, as well as social medias for us and the podcast itself. The podcast is now on Facebook, Blue Sky, Twitter, and Instagram, so you can follow us on all of those platforms and support us in any way that you can. Uh, and look out for other things, as this is actually our 80th episode. So obviously we don't get to do this as frequently as we would like. So if we did, we'd probably be well past 100 by now. But but yeah, thank you guys. Alan, give us your closing remarks.
yeah, thank you for listening. It is our 80th episode, and great to be here for this milestone. And I hope we can continue to just offer our insights into the wacky world of wrestling out there. Thanks for listening.
Yep. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.